recognized in another context. So, sisters who were maybe like on the quieter side, but they still, really valued the chapter, but, they just aren't as good at showing it as some of our more outgoing sisters. Because we thought that it was really important to value those people too, and to make sure that they knew that, they were valued. And we don't only do recognition at these 2 points in the year. Like every chapter, we kind of have like our little informal like Sister of the Week type of thing that we do.
Standards Board also does recognition. It's not just about cases. You can send in letters for both Sister of the Month, which is something that happens obviously every month, and you write a letter about someone you feel really exemplified Sigma Psi during this time period, and Standards Board recognizes them. And there are also Super Sig nominations, which is essentially someone who has really gone above and beyond the call of duty at any time during their 4 years here, and just to recognize what an exemplary contribution they've made to the chapter.
Yeah, and every week with like our little mini, informal awards, they're just kind of fun. Like we have Sister of the Week, and then we have Officer of the Week to recognize, when an officer's done something great, because a lot of times officers don't necessarily hear that enough. And then the Bookworm of the Week is kind of what we call it, and it's just about somebody who's done something awesome with scholarship. So that way we're kind of like, we're not just recognizing officers, and we're not just recognizing sisters that we like, but we're recognizing things that other people are doing as well.
Yeah, at the chapter, like everyone has the opportunity to put someone in, so it's not just people who are really going to take the effort to write a whole letter. It's shorter, it's simpler to say everyone has the chance to be recognized.
We have a lot of alumni events. Our alums are very involved. And so we kind of have, fun events like the alumni picnic. We had an alumni symposium in the spring where alums, came back, and we did this in the fall as well, where alums, came back and kind of talked to us about, some of the things that they're doing. So this again kind of like is really involved with, professional development is where they help out a lot. But also, like we had one of our alums, Bronwyn, for instance, comes back regularly and talks about, why is service important? Service, is important for these reasons. And people are really invested, and, our service chair, got really excited and was like, I want to talk with you about, ideas for how to make, for how to make service, something even more ingrained in our chapter. And things like that happen a lot. We have alums come back, to talk about things like that, whether in a formal context or in an informal context. Something new we also did was having our exec board meet with the alumni exec board, because before they were kind of these two separate entities, and we did our thing on exec, and then they did their thing on their exec board, and we didn't ever really talk to each other, which doesn't make sense.
There was one person to talk between.
Yeah.
Wasn't super helpful.
Yeah, there's our alumni chair who talked with them, and then our president would kind of, get yelled at if the alums didn't like something we were doing, but then nobody else would really hear it or really know what was going on. And it was kind of always, in a negative context if the alumni exec board was talking to you. But this year we decided to turn that to be something positive, where if you're an officer on the executive board, you have an alumni counterpart. So I personally am the VP of Membership Development. There's not a VP of Membership Development on the alumni executive board, but I meet with the historian. Because the historian, keeps records of everything involving ritual, and involving, our chapter's history, and new member education. And I oversee all of those officers, and it's really helpful to me to meet with her. And then there's VP of recruitment who meets with VP of recruitment. That one kind of makes sense. But it's just really helpful to kind of have that voice, and they don't exist to tell you what to do, but it's more of if you have a question, you now have that person that you can go and talk to if you need help. And I've already kind of mentioned, they come back a lot to help with recruitment clinics. They came back at leadership retreat and other chapter activities.
Yeah, something else I would add about the alumni coming back is, like Cindy kind of mentioned, it's not just in those formal contexts of alumni symposium or a chapter with rotationals or recruitment clinics. Whenever the alums are around, they serve as a really positive example because they're so passionate about what they do care about. Like Bronwyn is a great example. Bronwyn is one of our alums who founded Land AMU, and she's very service-oriented, always willing to talk about that. But it's not just that. They have so many passions that they're so strong about, and they serve as a great role model for our women who are still forming their own interest, who say, oh, maybe I like this, but I don't know what to do about it. And the alumni are always there to say, well, if you love something, you should do it. And so it's great to have them around, whether it's formally or informally.
Yeah. And then I already kind of mentioned the alumni board restructuring, just kind of how that worked a little bit before they were kind of this one big conglomeration of people, like, you know, all of people who like wanted to get involved. And it was great that, you know, a lot of alums wanted to get involved, but it was also kind of too many. It was too many people, and the people who wanted to be involved maybe necessarily shouldn't have been, only with a select few. But what this kind of did was broke the alumni board into 3 distinct sections that each dealt with a different component, like, you know, housing, or then the normal exec board. And they all work on like their each distinct separate things within the context of the chapter, so that like you have the experts all in one area versus just having everybody all together with like providing input on something they may not necessarily know very much about. So that's just been really helpful in terms of like how our alums interact with each other and us as well. So looking forward into 2015, we've already started to implement some of this, but pretty much they're kind of like these broad overall goals, because we've already like structured a lot of the things that we were doing last year in the spring and in the fall. But we really enjoy like our relationship with, you know, the Greek Life Office and with the alums. So we're working on continuing that relationship by utilizing those resources. So like Amy Jackson, for instance, this year at our sisterhood retreat in the spring is going to do an MBTI presentation with us, which, you know, everybody's really excited about. Jamie McMillan did Strengths Quest, you know, in the fall, and then she did a follow-up Strengths Quest this spring. And then of course we had Jamie Lynn in his conflict management workshop. And we talked kind of about the Sigma Psi experience, like, you know, as a concept, so that everybody understood it in this way, and everybody does understand it in this way now, of like, okay, everything is related to membership development, everything's not separate, but pretty much we just kind of want to get it in writing, so that we don't have things called the butterfly program, the daffodil program, the emerald program, but it's all just exists under the one triangle program. So we already have like a draft for how to do that exec's kind of going through, to make sure that, you know, the triangle program is, you know, it's something that you don't have to change a lot of it, but you can just change little components so that people see it better and can actually utilize our programs, you know, in the way that they were intended, rather than as something that's separate. And a lot of that just has to do with removing titles from everything and then changing how it works with different levels. So like, for instance, with the butterfly program, which I'm going to call a recruitment program because I think that that's the more applicable name. With our recruitment program, it's really like a tool that you use to achieve your goals. So it's kind of like an action tracker type of thing. So in that sense, it works as a checklist, but it's something tangible that you can use to be like, okay, am I actually achieving my goal? And so really, like, the only way you would use it in the form that it is now, where like it's where your letter is X times a week, attend a PR event, things like that, would be at level 2, where you're just kind of starting to get involved in understanding what the chapter means. But level 3, how it would be used would be more about like, okay, did I have quality conversations, and like measuring like the quality of your conversations rather than like the quantity of people that you talk to, because you can talk to like 30 people, but you don't know if that's actually going to be like, you don't know if those conversations were actually good or not. So that's something that we think would happen with level 3. And then with level 4, the recruitment program turns like exclusively into professional development, because by that time, like, you should have already mastered recruiting. You should already understand exactly how recruiting ties into the chapter. So that's kind of a look ahead at how we're kind of restructuring so that everybody sees it that way.
And again, a theme with that, as we've kind of seen with bringing back conflict resolution, bringing recruitment clinics throughout the fall, the whole theme here is that chapter meetings and chapter time is really used to actually develop the sisters in ways that are tangibly valuable. It's not just, let's have a chapter meeting, let's read officer reports, let's run through the agenda, but really using the chapter's time as, let's keep revisiting these things until they're fully integrated into part of our culture. And moving on to recruitment, something we're working on, looking ahead, is making recruitment more visible, even in winter, which can easily be considered like the off-season of recruitment. And the continuous recruitment chairs have really stepped up their game, and they're continually, reminding sisters about recruitment. There's going to be more recruitment clinics in the spring, and every week the recruitment team is now holding office hours so they can talk to the sisters about recruitment, so that recruitment isn't just done in this blocked off room. No one knows what happens, but so that the active chapter can engage and give their opinions and say, why don't we do this? I really like when we do this. And so really making sure that the chapter feels more involved in that process as well.
Yeah, that's it.
Questions?
You guys talked a lot about how your chapter internally manages membership development and things like that. How does your ritual and the values that you impress upon your values show in the community, where things like, I don't know, specific things, maybe like Saturday service or other things like that are more Greek-wide, campus-wide?
Yeah, I think this comes up in multiple different ways. With the Triangle program, like a lot of people's goals are to be like out there, in the community, especially in the character section, but in the other two as well. So it's something that that's something that we're consistently working on. But a lot of the things that we're doing is kind of like it's individual goal aspect related to Sigma Psi, but then also how do we present how do we present ourselves so that we everybody knows that we're a Sigma Psi. So do you want to add on?
Yeah, I think that's something that comes up a lot in recruitment as well. In focusing on using those skills to talk to anyone at any time, no matter where you are, it really gives them the tools to be out in the community, especially coming from a chapter where we have a lot of sisters on the shyer side, giving them the ability to recognize that it's not scary to go out and talk to people wherever you are is really helpful for helping them integrate themselves into the community.
Thank you.
You guys talked a lot about prepping your members for recruitment and values-based. What do you do to showcase that to the potential new members? How do they know what your values are, and how do you get that across to them?
Well, something we focused on this year was using stories to showcase our values, because it's a bit hard to sit down with a P&M and say, this is how I feel about sincerity. It doesn't always come across as the most impressive to a P&M. They don't necessarily see that that's why they're joining Greek life. So with P&Ms, you start in a softer way of something they can see. So you tell them a story about a time that you helped the chapter, about a time that the chapter helped you, and kind of going through that levels of what's in the story. Obviously, there's the sisterhood, but then what did how did you get to that point? Where did that growth come from? And another thing with showcasing values to P&Ms is interacting with each other and working on making sure that when we're talking to each other with P&Ms, if it's two sisters talking to a P&M, that you can see how much they care for each other, and how their relationship has really grown because of the chapter as well.
So how far along do you think you are in this process of trying to reframe this, and so that members see everything as member development, and how do you plan on evaluating how you're doing to know how to get it 100% ingrained in the chapter?
Yeah, I think that, it was something, it wasn't just one presentation and then now we're done, everybody completely understands it. This is something that we kept reviewing during chapter meetings, and just also through personal conversations. I've had a lot of people talk to me about the Triangle program. And pretty much we're already there. We already understand everything. As that way, it's just getting it on paper so that people actually see it. So that's what we're working on this year, is having it be actually laid out. Here's what this looks like, instead of getting people to only kind of conceptually understand it, getting it on paper so that incoming new members can also see it that way.
And speaking as someone who wasn't on exec either semester last year, I think it really helped from the start that exec included the active chapter in their decisions. It wasn't something that happened in the basement, exec just deciding it's going to be membership development all the time. But really starting the process with talking to the active chapter during chapter and having those discussions of what do you expect of yourself for the chapter, what do you expect of others for the chapter, and using that to move forward with the minimum expectations as well as how they presented the Triangle program. So from the start, everyone was involved.
Yeah, it wasn't just me saying, okay, this is now how we see membership development, but really, the entire time that I presented was me asking questions. So, okay, what program do you think fits here? And then oh, I think the butterfly program goes there.
Yeah, so it was
Like-
really obvious that everyone could see those connections.
Yeah, like I didn't tell anybody anything. Like they all, like I just got the answers from them and like put it together on a massive map based on what everybody else was saying.
But how do you know when everyone's 100% bought in?
I mean, like, it's just kind of something that has happened through individual conversations. So, like, I think you're asking kind of about, like, how are we measuring it type of thing.
Well, I mean, assuming that even whatever you've done, not every sister is on board with this yet.
Yeah.
And so my question is, how do you kind of keep looking at and evaluating to knowing that your goal is to get every sister on board with the idea that this whole thing is to help me get better?
Yeah, and I think that just kind of happens through repeated conversations, and it's not just me that's doing it. Like our scholarship chair has like said, use this scholarship, like use our scholarship program as a tool for achieving your scholarship goal with the triangle program. So really, kind of like the officers are bought in. So it's not just me. So it's kind of having like that trickle down effect with like, okay, now other officers are saying this, and other officers are connecting the dots as well, and they're able to talk to other people who like maybe I haven't reached out to about it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's this very trickle-down effect coming from exec and going into all the officers who fall beneath the officers on exec, and making sure they understand that this is why we do the things we do, because I think it's very easy for individual sisters to get caught up in, oh, I have to go to these things. And so something we've been doing is directing them to the officers in charge of those events, and, you know, having those conversations to say, this is, well, why do you think you're here? You know, why do you think this is important? And making sure that all the officers, it starts with the officers really, to make sure they all know that it's to help our sisters get better.
Yeah, and that's, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, and like that's really like why we just need something down like on paper that gets rid of the word like program, gets rid of the word butterfly program, emerald program, and just has it all in like one consolidated location.
The Sigma Psi experience.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not even just the triangle program. It's really, this is who we are. This is why we exist as an organization. Now we want to make sure everyone sees that. So that's the point of writing it down.
What level did you guys submit for?
Excellence.
Anything else? All right. We're good then.